is a deep subject,
Mm-hmm.
especially if someone has something that's really cool. What is the coolest thing that maybe you would say in your lifetime you've been envious of someone else for having?
Oh man, I think envy is an interesting topic because you can spin it so many different ways. I would say in my adult life that I can remember, one of the biggest envy moments as a sports fan, being from Winnipeg when I was really big into the CFL, watching my other friends enjoy their teams winning championships.
Ooh.
As the Canadian Football League, in a 9-team league, my team from Winnipeg went 29 years in a 9-team league without winning a championship. So my whole adult life, as you know, this team is at the top of the list of things that I love and celebrate. Why can't I just enjoy what that moment felt like? That was probably the apex of my envy.
Envy, yeah, and you want you're right. It can go so many different directions, and like if it becomes items, then it's really like coveting something that someone has. But you're right, envy can go so many different directions, and that's an interesting sports example.
Yeah, it's the first thing I thought of, and I can't, you know what? And it's funny because envy is one of those things that early, I think in my life, maybe with a poverty mindset, you kind of look at someone and go, oh, I wish I had what they had. But the older that I've gotten, and I've, I'll be honest, through therapy, that a number of times I realize now if I see people who have a lot, I celebrate them. Like I genuinely have an excitement inside me going, wow, you probably worked for that. You probably, there's a lot of things in line. So like, I honestly, genuinely don't have a lot of that. Lord willing, maybe I do, maybe I don't. Maybe I shouldn't declare that. Maybe the Lord's going to show me in this episode that, hey, you have a nice roadcaster. I don't. But, I've arrived in a spot in my life that if I see people with great things, I honestly am genuinely excited for them. So for me, the sports team winning a championship, me being jealous and envious of like, can I just feel what that, like, you had a nice hoodie that says champions. I want one of those.
Well, I'm happy knowing you. You're one of the guys that when it comes to sports, you're not the bandwagon. I just love it when all of a sudden the playoffs happen and you know the team that, okay, this team looks like they're really going far. All of a sudden these like jerseys come out of the woodwork and people are talking about hockey or football or baseball or and something else that you've never mentioned that for the last like 10 months. And now all of a sudden you got a sticker on your vehicle. You're wearing your jersey on game day.
You don't even know how to pronounce the players' names.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
So what about you? Envious?
Boy, you know what? I think very young, I remember an older guy saying to me, he said, we have to remember that life does not consist of the abundance of things. That's a scriptural principle, and I think when it comes down to sports, it would probably be something similar to that. I think one of the things that I've been, I guess you'd say, envious of is when I see someone finding success when I was younger that I felt that I should have had, or something drew attention that probably shouldn't have drawn attention. And then you're kind of like, well, wait a second, like, how did you foster that sort of like step up, whether it's like career or life or something like that? And you almost like, not that I'm envious or I want that, because I don't want the easy road. At the same time, it was just, you're just kind of like taken back by it. You're like, wait a second, how did that work in your favor? It wasn't supposed to. You're being lazy, but yet somehow you got rewarded with success. I'm envious of the success without all the effort.
Episode 18, Gospel in the Game. I am Dave. That is Dan. This is Envy, and we've had some doozies in our episodes so far. We've had some good ones. Thanksgiving was a fun one as well. Enjoyed that, and there have been some topics. I don't know if this is a predictive text to be a heavy one. Maybe it won't be, but it's an interesting one, and for sure. Yeah.
And don't mean to cut you off, but we've discussed having the subject of envy for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of seems to like work its way up through the woodwork again. So I think it was good that you mentioned for us to tackle it and just brought it back to light again, because it's one of those things that it can easily be like pushed back. Well, you have an envious moment and all of a sudden you just push it away. and it just kind of hangs there on the surface for a little bit without ever being dealt with or worked through.
Yeah. It's funny, when you look at topics that I think that may be prevalent in our society, but we may not address them to the surface as much. Pride and envy are probably two pretty big ones. So I'm glad that we're able to bring this to light today. The scripture for today comes out of James chapter 3, verse 16. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice.
And it can, envy and athletics can go together very well, can't they? There's not multiple winners, although the world would like it to be that way.
Participation trophies everywhere. Yay!
No, we can't put you up on a podium.
No.
The podium has to be level. That way the third place, the second place, fourth place, they're all on the same level.
Yeah, even though you've trained for 9 years, it's 365 days a year for this, and you clearly are the stronger athlete, we don't want to make the second and third place people feel less than, so let's not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we can't be envious of those that are better than us. In the same way, if you are really good at your sport, please don't be envious of those who struggle.
Sure.
Because they get all this time off.
Yeah.
They would rather train playing NHL 24 on their or 25 on their video game system.
I'm so old. I'm going back to NHL 2005 or 95 or 94 or 1992 is the first one that came out anyway.
Actually, the best was on Sega. Mario Lemieux's hockey had fighting in it. And you literally had to get 3 clean shots, and then the guy would just lay there bleeding.
I remember in NHL 93, if you got enough speed and you railed some guy, blood would fly out of his brain when he's laying on the ice. He clearly can't do that anymore.
Yeah. And I always remember it's I would be the Buffalo Sabres. Everyone would be like, why are you being the Buffalo Sabres? They had Pat LaFontaine and McGillney, and you could play them the whole entire time, and you were all you had to do was fake in. Yeah, that was the move. Yeah,
envious of an easier time in life for sure. As athletes, envy can appear in a lot of different ways. You and I talked about off the air an example of envy. Maybe it can be something as simple as 3-on-3 overtime. Right, you're in on a 2-on-1 or maybe even a 2-on-0. The guy who's got the puck has got 10 goals, and the other guy who on the wing who's got 35. And he, wants to score another goal, and the guy makes a nice move who's got 10, pops it in. Teammates excited for him, but maybe deep down inside he's going, that was my shot. I had a great celly planned, right? I've been saving this celly up, and I wanted to throw it out, and you took my moment. That maybe could be an
for sure it could, or the guy that's on the bench.
Yeah.
The guy that's on the bench that's okay, I should be out there. I'm better than this guy. I'm faster than this guy, or I'm a better face-off guy than this guy. Why is he out and I'm not? It can go easily across the board. When I was I was probably about 11 playing hockey. We used to have, as part of minor hockey week tournaments, we used to have, if you go into overtime, you pull the goalies. And then you go play for a few minutes, and then you take a guy off, and then you take a guy off. Yeah, they would do that. But at first, they play overtime with the goalie. And I remember telling my coach, I didn't get a whole lot of ice time playing as a winger that year. And I remember looking at my coach. He put me out there in overtime. I was like, he put me out there in overtime. This is my moment. I looked at the bench. I skated back. I took a little turn by the bench. And I said, Coach, I'm going to put it in the net. He goes, you go for it, Dan. And I went out there, and I scored the overtime winner.
Okay.
And I was so excited. And I remember how many guys that were obviously better on our hockey team were absolutely shocked that I scored this overtime winner for us to win the game. And literally, the comments were afterwards by a couple of them. I can't believe you got put out there. And I'm wait, aren't you excited? So it's the other side of the envy, where all of a sudden it was aren't you excited that we won? Wouldn't you be happy that I scored? What if I went out there and they scored on us? Would you be envious that I was on the ice when they scored on us?
Sure.
So I think there's not the other side of envy. It's not always the person who's envious, but people being envious of us is also the other side of the coin.
Yeah. So we can take that. Sport is obviously the focus, the Gospel in the Game podcast. The sport is the focus but we want to bleed life together as well. Let's apply that to life overall, right? You and I, although great friends, live in two different life worlds. You're a father, a husband, business owner, chaplain, pastor, 9 more hats, right? Me as a single guy, we live in different worlds.
You do.
Right?
Well, and I think, not to interrupt your thought.
No, but where I was going with it is that if you can relate to situations like that, as a listener, if you are a single person and you are spending time with a married person, there can be envy coming on both sides.
Oh yeah, absolutely can. We hung out the other evening away from this podcast, spending time together, and I actually, the thought came to my mind was I had finished doing something. I was headed to go to meet up with you, and I was thinking even just like, okay, we're doing something together outside of this, but we're coming from totally different schedules as well. And so not only different schedules, but different schedules the next morning. I had a very early morning the next morning. And so it was like...
I didn't.
You did. But so it's not only life stage, because we're both very similar ages as well, but I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes things can work well together. Because God has blessed us with a friendship, even though we have 2 different perspectives and life experiences and years before, that we can come together and talk about similar ground that we have, and hopefully give the listener something to take away from. One thing that I really wanted to bring up as part of this is the digital world.
Sure.
We live in a world of envy.
Yeah.
Where the portion that's often processed and presented is not always as life entails.
Absolutely.
And usually that digital snapshot of someone's life that's given can often cause envy, and unbeknownst or maybe even unwittingly give that perception that everything is great or you should be jealous of me for doing this.
Sure. I was going to lead us on a road to kind of define this spot, but I'll come back. Actually, this went on a good, because you're following the itinerary. I was going to take us on a bit of a rabbit trail. So, lo and behold. But so I want to dig into where envy comes from.
Yeah,
because I think
that's a good thing to start with.
I think that as we profess to be believers in Jesus, we are Christians, that the antithesis to the gospel is the enemy, the devil, Satan. He's the one who comes to, the Bible says that the thief, the enemy, who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So the good things that the Lord has planned, the enemy wants to try and turn them into evil. So God wants us to live in unity with each other, wants us to live in peace amongst each other. The Bible refers to that, live peaceably among, if you're able to live peaceably among all of you together. So the envy, if you look at, as we've talked about in previous episodes before, what caused Lucifer to fall from heaven was pride. Right? So envy and pride can often go hand in hand together. So when we are envious of other people, that is a root of selfishness and pride, which is, derived from the devil, but we have a flesh, we have a selfishness in our being. We are broken people. So that would be the heart of where that comes from, right? So I would want to look at someone else's life in the digital world, right? As I'm scrolling, if I see someone's having success, hey, look at me, I built my business, blah, 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 I got a nice car, nice family. The intent for that will be great. Like, good for you. You should want to encourage others to, hey, this is what you can attain. But what often happens through that is people will go, oh, my life isn't fulfilling enough. Like, I wish I had that. Now I feel empty. I need to have what they have, right? That's what doom scrolling can turn into.
Now, I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it comes into a part where I was going with it, was the presentation of it. The enemy relies on counterfeit.
Yes.
So the enemy can't present himself. That's what pride was, where Satan desired to be like God. But you can't be like God, because you're not God. And so because you can't, everything's counterfeit. And so now, because everything's counterfeit,
and
the presentation of something is fake. And so that's even a terminology that we use when it comes to presenting yourself in a social media or digital world. You're presenting yourself as fake. It's like the person that poses next to the Lamborghini and they're leaning on it. And then the guy's like, you don't catch the part where the guy's like, hey, don't touch my car. right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's not yours.
Or have you seen those videos of a guy posing? He's in an airplane, but he's taking a picture through a toilet seat.
Yeah, or the milk jug. They're under the milk jug handle. It's like, or the washing machine.
Right.
It's like, and that's exactly it. And so I think it's like, if I can like give a perception of not necessarily to cause envy, but to make people like wish that they had my situation, but you're lying. You're presenting a lie.
Yeah.
And so I think you're so right, where it's like the danger is to be envious of having something that's legitimate and people wanting that. You want to create that.
Sure.
You want people to have something that's authentic. You want people to have things that are real. We don't want to give false joy or false hope. And so I think it's important that we present that as a believer, that something that follows Christ, that we have real hope. We can experience real love, real relationship.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in episode 19, which I'm excited about, the concept. And we're not going to tell you what it is, but authenticity. I think more and more in our world today, we're gravitating more towards authenticity because, I want to talk about, we're going to save it for the next episode. But yeah, you're so right that, and there are people on Instagram that I follow that present like their life is all put together. But I spend a lot of time, you and I both do, studying people and the ability to just interact with people. You can kind of poke holes and go, okay, well, there's like some real, can't think of the word, it's like disunity.
Oh, okay.
No,
I was going to guess scooter.
Yes, binoculars. There's some real binoculars over there. There's some real unhealth in some areas. I can't think of the word. It's
okay,
anyway.
let's do trades. So like if you can back to the first word.
Fart. No.
Right.
Is that what you were doing?
No. I was waving my hand.
The runs.
We used to, I had my dinner table, like with my kids when they were really young. We used to sit down, like if they were wound up or excited, we'd say, okay, silent meal. You have to communicate everything with actions, like as charades.
Sure.
And so sometimes the kids would get frustrated, and I'd hold my hands up and clench my fists together and pretend like I'm grunting.
Right.
And then, like, someone would guess. They'd be like, "You're plugged up." Or I'm like, "No, I'm frustrated."
We really got off track here, but anyway, some of those influencers, you can see the unhealth in their life going. Okay, everything is presented great, but like, what about this and what about this? And there's some anxiety there and some whatever, and so nobody's got everything perfect. But I think you're right. In the digital world, envy can rear its ugly head because it's counterfeit. Like that is the perfect word for envy is counterfeit.
You can, and see, people can present it really well. Like there's honest achievements. You look at the sports world, and okay, a guy goes and he scores a hat trick in hockey, or gets 2 touchdowns, or a certain number of receptions, or yards run, or home runs, and it's an achievement and accomplishment. And it's not him that produces it. It's maybe the team or the league or someone else puts that out. And even without intention, all of a sudden, oh, hey, look, he made the All-Star team. Well, I didn't pick myself to be on the All-Star team. I just performed at a certain level that I got selected to be on the All-Star team. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, this causes envy, even though it wasn't even inflicted by the person it was about.
Sure.
But then all of a sudden, you have the guy like every lap. Well, hey, you're still posting about 4 years ago when you made the All-Star team. Like, get over it. Like, that's been done and gone already.
Sure.
But it's easy to make that part of our identity, isn't it? Where all of a sudden, it's like we have an accomplishment in sport. We make it our identity. It's the old thing. Yeah, back in '76, I had my high school football team. Like, you haven't ran for 15 years, let alone played football.
Yeah, 50 years.
Yeah, but you're still reliving the dream.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the dangers with envy is like envy can almost build into those other things. Like you said, it's that now we have pride. Now we have all these other things. It's really a root thing, isn't it?
Well, and that's why in sport, and we talked about it when we did pride, is that why often athletes get addicted to cocaine and things like that because they can't get that high that they felt when they were at the peak of what they were doing. So, and even in the concept we talked about off the start of the show, right? In situation that what do you do when others are doing really, really well and you're envious of them, right? Like getting back to the example there about, 2 different lives we live, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a beautiful family, you have a nice setup in your life, which someone from the outside driving through your neighborhood can look and go, oh, these stinking whatever, rich people, if they were going to do that on one side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
But you don't often look at the journey that went there, or,
Or the fact that I drive past a really nice acreage and be like, wow, that person has a really nice place. It's way better than my place.
Yeah, and it's, and we can get caught in that leveling up, always, we don't ever have enough.
That's right. Or someone has something that's always better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not content in what you have, right? So, and I think a big component to that, in chatting with someone just yesterday, it was talking about a situation that you never really know what's happening underneath. I have a friend of mine right now who's going through some difficulty. There are family members that, like, if you knew the whole story of everything behind the scenes, you'd go, my goodness, like, how heavy is that? But this person does a great job of just on the outside going, hey, everything's fine, right? Drives up, nice vehicle, got a nice house, things are good. But, like,
you don't know the whole story.
You don't know the whole story, right?
Yeah.
So, and early in my teenage years, and again, I talked about at the top of the show that I've really, gone through some therapy over the years to be able to really understand, like, hey, like, I want to celebrate successes now, right? Because I found in my life, when I get jealous of others, I'm going underneath and going, what about me is insecure that I can't get to a point of celebrating somebody? Hey, like, wow, what a marriage. You guys have been together for how long? Like, you look just great together, but you don't know what they're going through behind the scenes. Hey, nice truck. Yeah, you don't know the 4 jobs that these persons have to work, or maybe their whole family died in a car accident and they got this money. You don't think they'd trade that in a heartbeat to get
for
their family back?
Yeah, totally.
Right? So it's so easy just to get our minds in that spot.
And I think one of the things, I'll give a personal anecdote, I guess. One of the things that I, as a hockey coach, that I struggle with is the world of sensitivity. So I have a roster of 20 young guys, and I have to work with them, and I don't know their background. I don't know their home life. I don't know all the details like you just touched on and said. I don't know the history. I don't know the relationship to their parents, those people that are in their life as that are my age, that are mentors. I'm the age of their parents. And so now, all of a sudden, there was a couple of these young guys that said, hey, listen, can you be a little bit more harder on us vocally in practice? And so I said to them, I said, hey, I need to just explain something to you. I believe that it's important to communicate. So if I'm just always angry at you and upset at you, then you'll only see me as angry and upset. And I always want you to understand the why of what I'm doing. And so we've had a pretty good, decent run of success lately. And today I planned on having a kind of a softer practice with them. We're a little bit banged up injury-wise and got a little smaller roster. But some of the simple things we're making mistakes on. So today we started off with a very simple drill, and we were struggling doing it. And so I said, okay, slow down the speed. Let's bring down the speed of it. Let's make sure it's more important that you're accurate with your passing and slower with your speed in order to accomplish your goal. Because our theme for December is going to be doing it with excellence. Okay, so we have to be able to do it with excellence. These guys couldn't get it. Could not get the fundamental thing. So we included some skating, we included some other things, and I started building up the emotion a little bit in order to get them stop and explain, go over it again, and then stop. Okay, now you have to do it again. Nope, now I have to do it again. And we had one time when we did the same drill, the same 2 guys had to do it 4 times in a row because I wouldn't let them do it incorrectly. And so I finally brought everyone in and I said, listen, I have to give you the why and why you're doing this, and you have to do it again. We're going to skate because you're not doing it correctly. We'll skate for a couple minutes, and we'll come back, we'll do it again. About the 8th time that we did this drill, they finally did it. And then we continued on through the practice, and we did it, the second version of it, and they couldn't grasp it again. So we had to go through the same thing again, guys repeating, guys doing it. And at the end of the practice, I had to communicate to them and say, listen, if I didn't care about you, I would have let you fail.
Sure.
If I didn't care about you, I would have just not pushed you, not gotten emotional. I would just let it go off my back. But because I care about you so much, I don't want you to fail on the simple things. And I think that really is the opposite. Like you opened up with the opposite of envy, with being excited about other people's accomplishments. In the same way, I need to be frustrated with their frustrations. I need to experience this. And I think it's really kind of adopting this principle when we have something like, whether it's pride or envy or anger, God always provides the opposite side of a coin.
Right.
And it's so hard to convey sometimes, where it's like, listen, like, I want to give you the story behind why I have what I have, or I'm doing what I'm doing. It wasn't just because it was handed to me, but there's a story behind it in order to help that envy become understanding.
Yeah.
And I think it would be greater if we could do that instead of presenting something for people to be envious about. Give the story behind it.
Right.
Say, hey, listen, here's the guy leading on the car. Today I was out for dinner with my wife, and we happened to go by this really cool parking lot where we would park for dinner. And we saw this really neat car. Here's a picture of it. And I wanted to pose a picture of it because I wanted to say, wow, like, same thing. I noticed that the guy, I actually chatted with him and asked him about his car, and he was talking about how he had to work his way through medical school in order to become a doctor, and in order to celebrate his 20 years of being a doctor, he finally bought himself a really cool car. And if we were able to tell more stories like that, then it would be like, wow, look, now we can come up against some of those things like envy and other things.
So, and the final component to that, I think, what about situations? And I think we can all think of people or groups or situations where people maybe are cutting corners or maybe even engaging in evil, dishonest activities, getting away with it, profiting from it, benefiting from it, and seems that, they're getting off easy, right? When you have gone the long road, if you built an enterprise, a company, whatever it is, it took you years and years and years and years to build you where you are, and this person shortcutted someone, cheated on their spouse, whatever it was, to get this.
Yeah.
How do you navigate through that?
Well, here's an interesting one. I remember this one guy that I had met, and he actually had stolen some technology from a company he worked at. And he just changed it a tiny bit in order to not be caught with it. And it was interesting because he thought of himself as a success. And then once I got the story out of him on how he became doing what he was doing, I realized how empty he was because he did not have a sense of accomplishment. He presented like he had a sense of accomplishment, but deep down inside, he knew the truth. He knew that he had cheated his way to become, quote, successful. And sadly, his business ended up dissolving. He ended up losing a bunch of other stuff because when that foundation isn't secure, all of a sudden, whatever's being built on it crumbles.
Sure.
And we know that even from that example given to us in the Bible. Don't build your house on the sandy land.
Yeah.
Build your house on the rock.
And, I also think of that verse, revenge is mine, says the Lord. And not in a way that, God is sitting there going, I'll smite them, let me show you, and I'll, turn it around. But the Lord will find a way to deal with it in a way that's just, in a way that will present an opportunity for this person to engage in a reflection and go, oh, shoot, you know what? I really need to change. Or even if it's the evil of evil, God has his own methods and ways, right? Revenge, I think, is that word. When we think of revenge, we think of sticking it to them or I'll show you. And it's like, well, okay, well, this person cut me off in traffic. Well, revenge is mine. God's going to make them crash in a, this, whatever. It's like, no, that's not, I don't think what the verse means at all, because that's our human understanding of revenge.
That's right.
But I think I love what you talked about with envy. The opposite side of envy is understanding and maybe a generosity component to it as well, right? A humility, all those things kind of tied together.
Yeah, and you had mentioned to me one time, just conversing and talking about someone that you had known who had found success and had gained success, and had gained all these assets and gained all these things and wasn't necessarily investing to his people, and it was frustrating. And all of a sudden, you were reminded of, wait a second, do I really want these problems? I don't want that guy's position, because that guy had me have 1 million items, but he's got 1 million problems to go along with them. And so I think sometimes in our human thing, we might see the success or see the gain and say, oh, wow, I really want that. But then you realize, wait a second, there's a whole lot of problems to go along with it. It's like the whole thing. People say, well, I'm going to go buy a farm. Do you realize how much work is involved in a farm? Not just getting it, but the daily work involved in the investment of time and resources. Otherwise, everything starts to crumble and fall apart if it's not maintained. And so I think sometimes envy can be, we have to look at the bigger picture of that. We'll see nice things in this world. We really will. But ultimately, we have to realize God's in control. He'll sort it out, right?
And maybe the best way to wrap it up is stewardship, I think, is the best way to understand how to navigate your life. That, the Lord will give you, as I'm trying to think of that verse when it talks about the unrighteous mammon. If I can trust you with unrighteous wealth, how can I present you with the riches? Pastor just spoke on it last weekend.
Well, even when Nicodemus was talking with Jesus in John 3, and Nicodemus asks him, and he tells him he has to be born again. And Jesus says to him, like, if I tell you earthly things and you can't understand this, how are you supposed to understand heavenly things? And so it's like that deeper dynamic of understanding. I kind of get what you're getting with that. You find it?
No. The thought, like the pastor literally just spoke on this. It was from Luke. Talking about stewardship and the unrighteous wealth. Anyway.
Well, you know what? There's parables even with the talents, the parables of the talents, and all of a sudden being given a lot, and one guy's given less, and one guy goes and he buries it in the ground. And
right.
Being trusted with those things.
I had a great example that I couldn't think. It was one of those days today, but so
it's going to come to you.
Yeah, and I think the best way to summarize it is it's easy to look at others, and it's a simple concept. It's not even really a biblical concept to look at it. Well, just there's always more to the story, yes, but the real honest way, the biblical principle I think that we want to steer people to on this show is just spend some time with the Lord and let him examine your heart and really understand and come to a true peace of knowing, like, why is it if you are looking at someone else and going, I want what they have, like, what's the root of that?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what's hiding underneath that?
Examining your heart is a good way of doing it. When I was a young man, I had the privilege of getting to know a very old man. I would travel to the States and visit, and just to wrap up our time together. And his name was Henry, and Henry would meet with me in the morning for a 6 a.m. Bible study. And then I'd come back and meet with family, and then we'd take off for the day. And we would spend 2 to 3 hours together. And I remember learning from his wife that Henry actually would get up at 3 a.m. to prepare for our 6 a.m. time together. And I had said to him one time, he was in his late 80s, and I had said to him, Henry, I'm envious of you. He said, why are you envious of me? I'm like in the late 80s. My time is short here. I said, no. I said, you're going to have the opportunity to be with God sooner than I am. I'm envious of that. And he said, Dan, don't be envious of me because I'm envious of you. I said, how is that? He said, you're a young man. You have many more years and many more opportunities to serve God than I do. And I thought that was powerful. That here was this man who had served the Lord for so many years, was envious of a young man because he had more potential windows of time in order to give towards God. And I think it's a good reminder to close with, that there are real things to be, quote, envious about.
And I think we all have it underneath.
Yeah, there is.
Everybody, regardless of who you are.
For sure we do. So instead of desiring the things of this world, maybe we desire an opportunity to serve him more.
Gospel in the Game, episode number 18. We got a good one coming up, 19, called Testimony. We're excited to bring you that one. You can follow us on all areas, all platforms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, and where all podcasts are found. You can download us. Thanks so much for listening. I am Dave. He is Dan.